You want me to do it? You can just sit down.
That'd be nice.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Fritz Smith. I'm a contractor here in Columbus. I own 50% of Decker Construction Company, the Greensboro Corporation, and the Apple Smith Corporation. And those are companies that deal primarily in contracting, supplying materials in the asphalt and controlled density fill area. A long time ago, I graduated from Capital University here in Columbus, and I have a degree in economics. That's why I'm in the paving business. Today, I had come with a plan to talk about some more about utility cuts. I understand that Gary Pilatus was on the agenda yesterday and talked a little bit about that. But this morning, my whole focus on pavement maintenance changed a little bit, and I'm going to kind of ad-lib here a little bit, talk a little bit about the utility cut restoration system, but I'm also going to take it a little step farther into the economics part of it, the thing that I got my degree in. Let's begin by talking about what Gary talked about yesterday. In the late 80s, probably 88 or 89, he asked me to be on a panel to try to figure out how to better do utility cut repair in Columbus, Ohio. The reason for it was an offshoot of pavement maintenance. They'd gotten a warning from the federal highway people that they were going to have a problem getting matching money, which is as much as 90%, for restoration of their streets, because what they were laying the asphalt on really wasn't any good. And most of what was wrong was that the streets had been chewed up by various utility contractors. Probably the two biggest offenders are their own water company, and then next was the gas company. And the backfill, the pavement restoration, and the general maintenance of those cuts was really very poor. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, it was a 1, maybe worse. And they had a backlog of as much as 2 years of not having the cuts repaired. Gary asked me to be on this panel, and I was reluctant at first because I just didn't see anything that was beneficial to me. But he got me in there and he got my juices flowing when we started talking about the different ways that the streets could be repaired. Back then, there were 26 different ways to fix a utility cut. It was bizarre. You really had to go out to the street and decide when you got there how you fixed it. The first thing we did as a group was decide that we needed to change that and simplify it. It was really pretty easy. It was common sense. If it was a concrete base or a concrete surface street, we put concrete back. If it was an asphalt surface street, we put asphalt back. If it was a brick street, we put brick back. And if it was an alley, we had a special treatment for that. 3, counting alleys, 4 different ways to fix a street. Pretty simple. Then we thought about, well, okay, now we've got a way to fix this pavement, but what else is wrong? Well, what else is wrong is that 99% of the backfill that was put in the hole when they fixed what was ever wrong underneath, if the water line, the gas line, the fiber optic cable, the plumber's repair, the sewer department, whatever the plethora of things that could go wrong underneath, they generally had backfilled it by just dumping some stone in there and somebody danced on it and they walked away, and pretty soon when they put the pavement on, it settled. So we looked at the alternatives to backfill that were available to us here in this area. The ready mix people had a product called controlled density fill, and we had quarries full of aggregate. The aggregate issue is pretty simple. That's what we've done for most of our lives. If you dump it in there and just walk away and let it settle itself, you got a sinkhole. If you put it in 3-inch lifts and compact it with a vibratory plate or something, you'll generally get a fairly stable base. And if you put controlled density fill in, you got a home run. It's maximum density when it hits the ground, and it stays there and it doesn't go anyplace, and it fills the voids that might occur underneath the edges of the pavement. And your pavement repair is likely to last a lot longer. So at that very same time, just coincidentally, we got word that there was a ongoing project in Baltimore, Maryland, done by the Baltimore Gas and Electric and the city utility operations there, where they had tested different kinds of flowable fills. The flowable fill that they used in Baltimore was a combination of cement and 100% fly ash out of the power plant's generating facility. We actually went over to take a look at it. It was very unique material. They poured it in, looked like pancake batter. It sat up overnight. You could re-excavate it easily. You could pave on it the next day, and their failure rate was 0. And they'd been doing it for about 5 or 6 years. Along with that, the municipality had established a system for monitoring the utility cuts that went on in their streets. And that system probably alone was worth the trip, because we found out how to monitor what goes on in your city or your municipality and keep track of everything that is being interrupted by the various utility cuts. Let me stop here a second. You all are probably, Gary probably already told you this, but how many utility cuts do you think there are in the streets of Columbus in a year? Did he tell you that? Anybody got a guess? 4 by 5 holes. How many do you think there are in Columbus, Ohio?
250.
250? Anybody else? 6,000. 6,000 utility cuts in the Metroplex in a year. There's the water department.
That video, I don't know diddly.
That's the water department, the gas company, the electric company, everybody else. What Baltimore did and what Columbus now does is they have a database. Everyone is required to get a permit to open cut anything in the city anywhere. Most of the municipalities surrounding Columbus, the Metroplex, have adopted the same system. There's a constant ongoing database that can be accessed and find out later on if you've got a problem somewhere, who did it, what they used to fix it with, and who might be at fault for repairing it. For the last 10 years, Columbus has had this system in place. As much as I hate to see more bureaucracies added to any government, it's one that works because it funds itself. The permit fees pay for the restoration and the people who administer it and the inspectors. And right now, I'm proud to say, because we've had the contract for 9 of the last 10 years, they have a 99.9% success rate, less than 1% failures. The rules and regulations and the specifications are right here. You're welcome to come up and get one afterwards if you'd like to take a look at them. Some of the counties and areas around Columbus have started to adopt this, some on a limited basis. We have entertained people from California to Florida here who have adopted these things. I got a call from the city engineer of Orlando, Florida a few years ago. Gary may have told you this. He came up here. Gary helped him walk through their system, then came to our office and saw the equipment that we use. He wrote me a letter 2 months later, and he said, on the plane on the way back, I decided I was adopting the Columbus system. He said, we're going to call it the Columbus Experience. It was worthwhile. It's going to save me millions of dollars. The equipment is things that we have adapted from things that already existed commercially in the marketplace. I'm going to start with the backfill, where we were fortunate enough to be introduced to the American Electric Power Company's research on fly ash backfills at the same time that this project with Gary was going on back in the late 80s. And they developed a patented process called flash fill. We have subsequently built and designed these trucks that are volumetric mixers, which make the material on-site fill a utility cut. It sets up in 15 minutes. We can pave on it in 30 minutes. It can be re-excavated with a teaspoon. Many utilities need to get back into the same place twice. They don't always fix it the first time. If you use the ready-mix product, you can get the same results in 24 hours or 48. You can pave on it, and you can for sure not get back into it in about 6 months because it'll be harder than Kelsey's you-know-what. That is a product that we supply here in Columbus with those units, and is part of our whole utility cut restoration process. We've built and developed these patch trucks, which are self-contained. They have what amounts to an asphalt silo on the back of them. You can hold asphalt in here for as much as 3 days. Comes equipped with everything you need: tack coat, air compressor, saw, 3 laborers, a roller, every possible thing, aero boards, traffic control, signs, the whole schmear to go out and take care of a utility cut. And we do it 24/7, 365 days a year. I've got the only asphalt plant in the Midwest that I think is open all year round, and we did it to service this business. Most of the utility cuts that occur as a result of the water department happen in the wintertime, obviously, with the freeze-thaw somebody mentioned earlier. Every time it freezes, it's like popcorn. We get water breaks all over town. Just this week, if you were here in Columbus, you read about the thing down on 4th Street. We were there this morning at 4 o'clock and filled the hole with flash fill. It is paved now, And once we get it, we guarantee them 24-hour turnaround to back the motoring public is not inconvenienced anymore. I can't do anything about how fast it takes to fix it, but I can tell you that at Broad and High in front of the RKO Palace a few years ago, a Mercedes fell in a sinkhole. You may have all read about that. It was in February. The city had multiple things wrong under there. There were pipes crossing in every direction, and it was as deep as this room. We came in and filled to different levels so that they could work their way up with the utilities, and when we got to the top, we paved it on February the 11th. It was snowing so hard, it was an ice storm that you couldn't see, and our biggest problem was getting away from the patch because every time we tried to drive off of the patch where the hot asphalt was, we got on the icy street. The next stop was the river. But we finally did get out of there, and that's the kind of service that we supply with these units here. Then, as an added thing, the system of the utility cut, which I'll let you read about, basically we're putting 9 inches of asphalt back on some controlled density fill of some kind. It's not always our material. But then once the patch is patched, we go away for 60 to 90 days, and we come back with these machines, which we call heat welders. And it's a little hard to see in this picture. I got a little better one here. They're the same basic truck with the asphalt supply and everything, but there's a 6x8 heating panel on the rear, which heats up to 2,400 degrees. It's not the flame-throwing things that you see on some units. This is actually like fire brick. This gets hot and it heats by induction of the asphalt. We get it back to its molten state, rake it to the proper consistency. We add new asphalt to it, put rejuvenator on it. We eradicate the seam, the cut. And we have, when we're done, a heat-welded seamless repair of the street where there's no joint. Now, as somebody said earlier, I can't stop the joint from coming back eventually, especially if there's just similar materials around it. But by and large, if you go around the city, most of these retain their integrity. And that's the thing that the Federal Highway people and anyone who is specifying overlays for a street or any kind of surface treatment wants to see when they come back to do the work. They want to see a street that's got some integrity in it. We can't cure age fatigue, but what you certainly don't want to put an overlay or any kind of surface treatment over a badly done utility cut. And I think if you take a look around your municipality or wherever you're at, you drove here today or yesterday, you probably drove through a bump or a depression that was created by some kind of an excavation made in that street. And many times those end up being potholes as they ravel out around the edges. This machine was developed by a contractor in Michigan who developed it for FAA purposes to fix runways, and he adapted it for what we're doing now. This is after they've heated. It shows that the asphalt is completely reheated, and we go wider than the perimeter of the original cut to make a smoother joint. And then when they leave, they throw some black sand on it to keep it from tracking, and that's what it looks like. And there's probably, 6,000 times 10 of those around Columbus right now. If you want to see one, just look down. You'll probably see it. This is a blow-up of the 4 different kinds of utility cuts. On the brick issue, they used to be you had to put concrete base underneath the bricks. We've convinced them that asphalt works just as well, and it speeds up the process. Utility cuts that are the worst always happen on the highest traveled streets, and people don't want to wait for 7 or 8 days or 24 hours or even 24 minutes for the concrete to get hard enough to put the bricks back on, so we've adapted the asphalt-based system. That's the commercial on what Decker Construction Company and its subsidiaries do on a day-to-day basis for the last 10 years in Columbus, Ohio. And then I said I saw something in the paper that I thought would get your attention in the economic part of it. Here was the headline today in the Dispatch. Activist for disability sues Grove City and Hilliard over ramps. This gentleman is the biggest single detriment to preventative maintenance to hit the street and highway business in the history of the world. The 1992 Disabilities Act brings tremendous economic pressure on any municipality. Those of you who don't know about the Columbus experience, 2 years ago they were sued by this group. They lost, and every city will lose. I mean, it's like being against apple pie and motherhood. You can't be against people in wheelchairs and disabled people. the law says that ever since 1992, if you resurface a road or reconstruct it in any manner, you have to make it adaptable for the immobile people in wheelchairs or any kind of a disabled person. Probably 90% of the municipalities in this country have chosen to either ignore it or didn't understand it. And Columbus, their problem has turned into a $30 million plus problem in 2 years. It's not hard to understand why people ignore it. Here's the book that the federal law gives you and tells you how to do a wheelchair ramp. It's 2001. Last time I checked, this was done in 1992. The law, this is an update in 1999. It's still a draft form. Kind of hard to get rules and regulations from a draft out of a law that was done in 1992. Here's the federal consent decree for the city of Columbus that says that you will have things done by certain dates, and if you don't, somebody goes to jail and you get big fines. Here's the consultant's handbook on how to do a wheelchair ramp in the city of Columbus and create them correctly per the draft guidelines of the ADA. Here's the handout that comes with the school you got to go to before you can build a wheelchair ramp in the city of Columbus. And here are the specifications that the city of Columbus now has for wheelchair ramps. And here, this is the real one, is the city of Columbus standard drawings that were changed on all other types of construction as a result of the ADA requirements. Now, it isn't just building wheelchair ramps. The fact of the matter is that you have tolerances that even the space shuttle is difficult to build with. And once you build a wheelchair ramp on a corner and the tolerances are met on that corner per that concrete piece of pavement you just put in, and the guy comes down in his wheelchair and he gets to the gutter and the street's got too much cross slope in it or elevation, now your wheelchair ramp is out of tolerance. So the rock that was turned over by the ADA thing is, not only do you have to build a wheelchair ramp everywhere that you touch a city street with any kind of non-maintenance effort, reconstruction, but wherever you put them in, you also have to make everything around it, everything appursuant to it, compliant. And it has caused, we found out that the City of Columbus curb detail is illegal. The sidewalk slope, it was 3/8 of an inch per foot, cross slope on all sidewalks in Columbus, illegal. The street slope or crown in the streets with a quarter crown in them gets the point from the quarter crown to the gutter too steep, illegal. If you have an alley or an intersection that meets at a T and the gutter goes through the intersection, illegal. If you can go through, it's just a plethora of things. So what they've had to do is redraft all the city specifications to comply with the ADA regulation. That's a very expensive thing. And this article in the newspaper today tells about the Grove City administrator being very angry because he thought he was trying to keep up since 1992 and now is finding himself in a position where he's going to have to spend his maintenance and resurfacing dollars to defend himself in court and then God knows what to build what it'll take to get himself back into compliance. That's the frustration of the whole thing. Not to mention the fact that there were a lot of heads rolled in different cities as a result of their failure to understand that or be able to adapt to it. And folks, I'm telling you, it's a moving target. Now, I also own a concrete company, and we are doing $10 million worth of wheelchair ramps, and I know what the problem's like. It's a very difficult thing, and it gets right back to what I said earlier. It's economics. You can do all the right stuff, put the right surface treatments on, decide to do things in the proper manner, but your dollars can be sucked up by not paying attention to the federal law around you. And the irony of this article in the newspaper is that we went to Grove City and to Hilliard and said, this is going to hit you. You're going to have a problem with it. We'd like to help you. We know how to do it. We have the tools and the people that are capable. We have a consultant that is ready to help you. The consultant has a member of his firm on the federal ADA commission. people in Hilliard's laughed at us and told us it would never happen to them. Never say never. It'll happen to you. So, that's the brief course. I know Joe told me I was last because I was supposed to be funny and get it over with quick. I don't know if I'm funny or not. I'm getting it over with quick. I probably scared you to death by telling you how bad it could get if you don't do the right thing. I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions. You got the real brief course in utility cut repair and ADA problems. Go ahead.
The flash fill, the weather. Explain, the weather has no effect on to any degree? Or?
I should have brought Bill Frechette, who invented flash fill, as my vice president and runs the company. He was a 26-year veteran of AEP, and he tells it better than I do. But basically, when Joe Ridgway was service director here, he challenged AEP to come up with a backfill material that would set up instantly, be paved on instantly, could be readily re-excavated, and could be used 365 days a year no matter what temperature was. And they did it with a combination of two different kinds of fly ash, Type C fly ash and Type F fly ash. Type C fly ash is the product of burning western coal, which has some calcium in it. Type F fly ash is the stuff you usually see in ready mix and is the inert product of burning Midwestern coal. And it was a cost avoidance thing for the power company to try to get rid of this ash. It's a waste product for them, and they actually just stumbled onto this process, which is proprietary, and they own the patent on it. We invented the equipment that makes it. It is mixed on the spot. It's not mixed at a ready mix plant. It comes with the ingredients in the truck, water and two kinds of fly ash. We have now adapted that the Type F fly ash, we are using more sand than fly ash. Believe it or not, we used up most of the Type F ash that was ponded around here, so we've moved on to a different kind of material. But the material does not get mixed till you're at the site. It's always used underground. We've poured it as low as -14. Our biggest constraint with the material is getting the truck to the job, not getting it mixed and poured in the hole. And it sets up so fast that there's no freeze-thaw problem with it. The only issue that we've had in the last 10 years of operation is that if we put it in a place that is vulnerable to water intrusion around the edges, we've had some places where we get hoof-ups as a result of the water freezing around it, if it doesn't have a way to get out. And the same thing happened with concrete or with any kind of other materials. We did extensive research in Dublin, Ohio on the freeze-thaw issue, and we discovered what the problem was. And in the material, it's where you put it. But our success rate there, again, is so great, and it's a product that just can be used when nothing else can be used. We become the backfill of choice for the water department and all the utility companies because it can be mixed on in a small amount. The gas company does these things called bell holes that are 1 by 1 where they check for gas leaks, and they may do 100 of them down the street, and we can fill those very easily and put the asphalt back and make them go away. Bigger cuts, it's a matter of convenience because we can do it 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and it sets up so fast we can turn the cut around in a very short period of time. Weather constraints with the ready mix product are that it will freeze and break on you because it doesn't set up for 72 hours. This material, I was hooked the first time I saw it. I just couldn't believe that they poured it in a hole 8 foot wide, 8 foot deep, and 30 minutes after they poured it, the man who invented it walked out on it. And I was expecting him to go bloop and just disappear, but he didn't. And I drove my car across it, and I said, well, this is something you got to do. It's not cheap. Its savings are in convenience and time and high quality, and it just is never a problem later on.
So you just backfill the top as far as the asphalt's concerned with cold patch?
No, we never use cold patch, although in these regulations, we found also, we did an experiment with, not everybody has hot mix available to them 24 hours, but we did an experiment with cold mix, and we found that if we put 9 inches of cold mix in 3-inch lifts and compacted it with something other than the guy's heel or the dump truck wheel, used compaction on it, that we could get as good a base course material as we could with hot mix. And then we would come back in the spring with this machine, reheat the surface of the cold mix, take 2 inches of it off and put hot mix on top of it, and it was good to go forever. The cold mix did not need to be removed. Now, convincing people to install cold mix in a proper manner in a utility cut is a very difficult thing. I mean, I like to refer to cold mix as a drive-by use. You drive by and throw it out, keep on going. And if you put it in right, especially the fiberized mixes and the ones that have a little bit coarser aggregate in it, it's as good as hot mix. And by heat welding in the spring, when the temperatures get up and you can get hot mix again, it works just fine. But we're bringing the flash fill or the controlled density fill mix up within 9 inches of surface and putting 3 3-inch lifts of either hot mix or a combination of cold mix and hot mix into to the utility cuts. And I'm going to pat myself on the back. I'm serious about it. We have 0 failures. We're just like 1%.
When you put that heat pad, or whatever you call it, down on the pavement, how long does it take before the pavement is to the consistency?
This machine here, it takes probably 2.5, 3 minutes. It cycles on and off. Because of its high temperature, we don't continue to heat it or you can burn the asphalt up. It's different than the other ones that are on the market that actually have a flame that comes out and blows on the asphalt, which will just burn the surface up. And if we left it on, it'd get it molten in a minute and a half, but there's too much heat there, so we heat it slowly with the induction. Then we rake it, scarify it, and we spray a rejuvenator on it. And whenever you touch asphalt with a rake, the first thing that happens is the bones all come to the top. So we scrape the bones off and we bring new virgin asphalt with us every time, and they put a little of that in there just to make sure that we have a homogeneous, consistent looking mat when we're done. But you don't have to do that. I mean, I've reheated things and raked them and re-rolled them in place, and you never know that, other than the fact that it goes back to black again, that it was ever disturbed.
You said you threw black sand on the top of
Yeah,
black sand.
it's just boiler slag. I mean, you don't have to use that. We've used playground sand. It's just to keep it from tracking. When they leave, they spray the surface with rejuvenator one more time. And generally speaking, we're in a place where they want the road back right now. And if you don't let it set up for half an hour or so, it'll track. So we just throw some sand on there to keep it from tracking. It's a convenience. This also can be used in the wheelchair ramp area. The city spec is that the final course of asphalt is supposed to be 3/8 of an inch above the lip of curb. And that 3/8 of an inch is illegal, according to the ADA. So we've gone back to many places where the ramp was okay, the curb and gutter angle was correct, but the lip was there, and we can reheat the asphalt and take that lip off. And it's a very inexpensive way to correct that. It's not non-destructive. It's not, you don't have to go in there with a grinder and grind it down and then try to put some asphalt back in there in a small area.
You're taking the lip all the way up to the crown, or are you just saying?
Well, there's an angle that's allowable. This being the wheelchair ramp and this being the street, and there's a degrees here, and I don't have that memorized. It's 13 or 16 degrees here, and you can be out of tolerance a little here as long as you can make it up over here, or vice versa. So as long as you have no obstruction, no lip, and you maintain, it's 12:1 this way and 1/4 inch per foot this way, and you keep this angle correct, you don't have to change the slope of the street that much. And then reality has set in over the last few months, and a lot of the places where we have lack of right-of-way, especially in the urban areas where there's buildings are real close to the sidewalk, we don't have enough room to go back 1.5 miles to get the slope, that we've had to put landing areas in that are level with the street. And the first few 100 dozen we put in, the first time it rained, they became nice little ponds. The water would come down the gutter and go into that thing and swirl around, leave all the trash and go back out. And the light came on that, come winter, that will not be a landing zone anymore. It'll be a nice little ice skating rink, and the skateboarders love them. But so what we did is raise them up 1 inch, and make get the flow right at the gutter line of where the curb would have been, in other words, and we tipped it a little steeper. And as long as we keep those angles all adding up to this magic number here, which I think is 13 degrees, then we're okay. But what happens out in the street generally is the street's tipped more than a 1/4 inch, and then you got a real problem in trying to get it angled right. It's fascinating reading material to go through 2,000 pages of ADA stuff.
Concerning the ADA, are the contractors being brought into the whole mix who are involved in the original design, or is it just strictly a city issue?
Well,
Suing is going on.
no, the contractors are not being brought in. There was a lot when the stuff hit the oscillating blade. The first accusation was, we're going to make the contractors fix what they did wrong. And we all said, we did it per the specs.
For the city spec.
Yeah, and then they went, oops, you're right. And then we went into a partnering issue here in Columbus, H.R. Gray, ourselves, and the city engineer's office, and tried to do it the right way. And the result of that was we took the whole year of 2000 off to figure it out. And it has just been since August of last year that we actually got in a productive mode of actually building things in the correct manner. And I'll give everybody, the bureaucrats and everybody else, credit that they've done a wonderful job of finally getting to a place where we understand what it is we're supposed to do. Now, the problem is now that a lot of what we're supposed to do is almost commercially impossible, and it's very, very difficult to meet the tolerances. But nobody has pointed any fingers at... the unfortunate thing is that some people got burned initially that probably didn't deserve what they got, because no one understood the magnitude of the problem, nor did they understand how to specify with a moving target that is, like I said, the specifications of the 92 law are still in draft form.
So did Grove City and Hilliard both draft their own specs?
Hilliard just chose to ignore it. Grove City has been trying to, on an ongoing basis, to put in wheelchair ramps with their reconstructions. They're all wrong. And the problem is that they don't understand what the specification is asking for. H.R. Gray here in town, it's a consulting firm, has been hired by the city to help them get up to speed. And H.R. Gray just put together a school, which now is mandatory. If you're going to work in any of the municipalities around here, you have to go to that school first to learn how to do it. It's worth going to. It's a couple of hours. They put it on once a month. Once you see that, and now the humane side of me is coming out, people in wheelchairs and with disabilities have a tough time negotiating what we've built. Now, we may have gone a little far on the extreme here with the tolerances we've got. Once you see the videos they have and the logic behind what they've done, it starts to make sense. It is completely away from the norm that we've had for 40 years in this country. We don't, we did wheelchair ramps in cookie cutter shapes for the last 40 years, and those just don't work. I mean, they don't meet the criteria that we're looking for.
ODOT standing on. They're starting to change those right now.
Mm-hmm. We just did an ODOT project on Broad Street, whatever that is, 16, and this is the other economic issue. I mean, they had bid items in there, and we bid them, and they had a force account, and we're about 150% over the cost of what they had budgeted, because trying to budget these things ahead of time is, every intersection is different, and part of the regulations requires you to go out and actually survey the intersection and figure out how you're going to do it. It's kind of like the utility cut thing. There's 23 different ways to make a wheelchair ramp, and it depends on the circumstances you have and where you're at. We're lucky in this part of the country because it's flat. I mean, imagine if you're in San Francisco. It's boring, not boring, it's comical to go to another city and walk around and look. My wife is always on me, what are you looking at the wheelchair ramps for? That won't work, that won't work, that won't work.
What do
do you do in a situation like that outside the landing area itself when you have elevation at where you're getting, it's 1 in 12 outside the ramp itself? If you're getting,
You have to have a landing zone at the bottom that's 5 by 5. And you have to have one at the top that's 5 by 5, and it has to be accessible all the way around. And you have to have the 1 in 12, and you can't violate the quarter percent either way. So if you run out of right-of-way this way, you go down the street. So you put your landing zone somewhere near the corner, and then you go that way down the street with traffic until you get to the top, and then you got to make sure that then the walk has to be wider in order to get your width designation. And just recently, here in the last 6 months, they've now said that they want walks to be 5 foot wide because 4 foot's not wide enough.
that's what we've been going by.
So you got to have a. They want a 5 foot now because you can't pass if two wheelchairs come up to each other, they can't get by each other.
But what about if you get away from the pad and you're going up an existing grade and you're not gaining anything by going back farther?
You just keep going till you get it, or the another alternative is if you can reroute them, you can deem an intersection non-compliant as long as you can get them around it some other way. And you can't cross the 35-mile-an-hour street without a traffic light. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on and on. And it's affected even our subdivision regulations for new construction because we've had to think up ahead of time how to put those things in, because it mandates that before you accept somebody's new development that it meets those criteria. All these things, and I guess I'm going to go right back to what I started to say before. As a contractor, I depend on the people in the public sector to do X number of dollars worth of work every year in the venue that I trade in, and it keeps my 150 employees employed. It puts a profit in my pocket. It keeps all the vendors who buy things I buy things from happy and employed. But this year in Columbus, the resurfacing program went from $40 million down to 10. Upper Arlington's resurfacing program went to 0. You guys got some slurry seal, and they spent $3 million putting in wheelchair ramps. Whitehall, Grove City, now Hilliard, Westerville, Reynoldsburg, and everyone in the country will be sued before the next 5 years is out. And ODOT thought they were exempt, and they're now finding that they're not, and they're after them too. So you're all in a place where you're going to see that come. Yes, sir.
I was visiting Tampa a couple months ago, and their subdivisions, 30-year-old subdivisions, are going out and retrofitting them.
Right.
But they, according to what you're saying, they're just cookie cutter the ramps. They're doing them all wrong.
If somebody wants to call them on it, they will. The question is how well organized the ADA is to fight this kind of thing. And I was interested in the response about what's maintenance and what's not. The lawyers in Columbus and in Upper Arlington who I've had conversation with say that slurry seal, the micro surfacing stuff, the Nova chip or whatever it is, and the asphalt industry's answer to it, which is smooth seal, the thin lift overlays, probably will count as maintenance and probably will eliminate the need to do the retrofit wheelchair ramp things all the way around the limits of whatever project you do. That does not relieve you from the responsibility of whatever impact that surface has on the thing of meeting the wheelchair ramp needs. So in other words, if slurry seal is how thick?
1/16 of an inch.
1/16 of an inch. You might get by with that. The smooth seal guys, where we're 1/2 inch to 3/4, we're going to have to deal with that transition at the intersections. And then anything else, any other kind of work you're doing says you got to do this. And it's just a big number, and it really worries us in the industry that it'll take the budget of a lot of these places that have, obviously you have a finite amount of money to spend. And if it's going to all be spent on wheelchair ramps, then a great deal of the industry that trades in pavements and stuff is going to have a tough time for a while. And whether or not it'll be interesting to see if somebody can get the two agencies, the Federal Highway Administration and the ADA people, to talking to each other and come up with a criteria that says that, I don't think mill and fill asphalt is a reconstruction myself. I think that's that's wrong. Do we owe the ADA people a concerted effort of doing things in a workmanlike manner to put in wheelchair ramps that meet the requirements? Absolutely. To do it in a shotgun manner, and that's what we're doing now, is ridiculous. We ought to take the city and divide it up into quadrants and work our way around clockwise or counterclockwise until they meet, and we're done. And, now what we're doing is we're trying to go back to 1992 and figure out how many streets were resurfaced and go out to them, and just the bureaucracy of trying to figure out where to put these things and where your liability lies is as cumbersome and expensive as resurfacing half a dozen streets. So it's a problem. In summary, do good backfill. Make sure that whoever your contractors are that are backfilling your streets, even if it's your own people, that they use a quality material. I highly recommend controlled density fill. I got 4 trucks. Columbus, Ohio is our venue. We're not going anywhere else. But there are people everywhere who have that material. Make sure you come up with a great design that meets this criteria of your pavement loads in your area. I highly recommend the 9 inches of asphalt, the heat welding process, the put concrete back where concrete is, and do your bricks right. Database. Make sure you make your people that are digging holes get a permit. Like I said, the little bureaucracy that has been set up here in Columbus to maintain the streets, the permit system works. They take in revenue equal to what it costs to fix it. We have a master contract with them that has a menu of 200 items on it, and the person who is digging the hole has the option of fixing it themselves to the standards that are required by the City of Columbus and being inspected, or once they've done whatever they're doing underground, allow the city to do it through us, the partnering contractor, and the cost of that repair is subtracted from their permit fee, and the balance is refunded to them. So you're assured it's doing that. Keep that record forever, because sooner or later somebody will either touch that patch or go back into it. And then be cognizant of the fact that every dollar that you used to be able to spend is probably now being usurped by the ADA problem. And the end.
Rich, that wasn't any fun, that was a downer. Especially for those of us who live in the city of Columbus and watched over the years that thing go from, well, it's probably going to cost us a couple $1 million, wasn't that?
It was $800 a ramp. It's now about $2,700.
Yeah.
It went from $5 million to about $40 billion last count. And climbing.
And one other time, I want you to say how many utility cuts?
6,000.
And your guess was?
250.
You sure as hell need this, Rich. You go home and
Did you
promise.
see my tag? From a small township. I had no clue.
You go home and study this, and I'll call you next week and we'll have a quiz.
Thank you.
Okay, unbelievable. After what we've gone through the last couple of days, that we ended up here within 3 minutes of the closing time. Show it on your schedule. It wasn't my fault. It's the fault of everybody who joined in this. And I appreciate, Fritz, you coming, and I know you do a good job and be interesting and entertaining. And I hope you will take the time. Okay, you can